What is going on, guys? And tonight we are back in the mix. Tonight we're doing a review session somewhat. So it's going to be between hands that I played in Omaha Eight or better and some hands that opponents played in Omaha Eight or better. But this is going to be the third version of the Mix Fix series. And in this one, we're going to focus on something that I think a lot of players struggle with in general, and that is playing King King in Omaha Eight or better. So kings in general, I think a lot of players I see when they come from, let's say, a high background, they look at them very similarly to aces. I think I think they would occasionally make if they're like their worst aces and they're a PLO player, they kind of get the concept and muck like their worst kings. But I still think I see a lot of players continue to overplay kings, or even like some type players underplay kings. So tonight we're going to go over some of the situations where I think it's okay to play kings and where in some situations you definitely shouldn't be playing kings. So let's start out. If you're playing in a three-handed game or a six-handed game or nine-handed game, like those situations and obviously they're going to matter a lot. Excuse me, because like in any sort of like nine-handed game, if you're under the gun with like mediocre kings, there's such a high probability you're going to run into some hand that has an ace in it that's just going to have you absolutely dominated. So if you're going to play a hand with kings, you usually want to have something like an ace blocker, or you want to have something like two low cards, and they want to be usually like either suited to the king or double suited. So like take a hand example like king, king, deuce three double suited under the gun is going to be a hand that's pretty much playable in any position. You have a hand like ace, king, king, if you have two kings and you're blocking one of the aces when you have an ace in your hand, that hand is almost playable from like most positions. Doesn't necessarily matter if it's going to be a high hand or a low hand, whatever your fourth card is. Usually, like when you start getting into some of the if you like ace king king nine, ace king king eight, those are some of like the border situations, I would say. But for the most part, if you have like any sort of ace king king Broadway card, any ace king king wheel card, especially wheel card, those hands are playable from any position. So like ace king king wheel is playable from any position. But ace king king Broadway, I would say like most combos are playable, but if you start getting into badoogies or like triple suits or something like that, and you're in early position like full handed games, maybe in those situations like those situations I probably fold in early position. But I wanted to go over some situations tonight with you guys to talk about like what I think is okay and whatnot. So let's start out here with the first hand. First hand here was a game I was playing 5-10 limit 08 on Phenom, and we are dealt king king jack 5 here on the button. Now I believe my opponent open raises here, so it kind of removes. But again, like if this folds to me here, the king king jack 5, I really only have like one. Like I have a high hand, but again, in a high-low game, you need something to either balance out the fact that you have a high hand, you need like a really good high hand, or you need like some low potential with your high hand. So like, king king 5, any wheel card here, almost any low card here, say like king king 5 low card here is probably playable here in a four-handed game on the button. One thing I will say though is, again, if you're in a nine-handed game or a six-handed game, sometimes that format changes a little bit because of card removal. So like if you're in a six-handed game, if you have like king king 10-9 on the button, something like that, that hand's probably playable in a three-handed game. Six-handed game, I'd probably say not. And the reason being is because now like the card removal, if three players fold in front of you, it's likely you're going to run into a better hand in the big blind. Also too, like it's most likely very it's probably like on the borderline, I would say, like the king king 10-9, something like that on the button. Where in a three-handed game you're going to be opening a higher percentage of your range on the button. In a six-handed game you're going to be opening a lower percentage on the button. I think that's just pretty standard for like any game, just like card removal, and is one of the major factors of why that happens. But again, if we want to talk about like what we're doing with some of our kings here, like if this is like ace king king, we'll say like ace king king without the 8 or 9. I usually kind of use that example, but probably like even with a suit with the ace king king 8, that's probably a 3-bet from the blocker perspective. But like ace king king jack 5 here, this is just going to be a pretty much a pure fold. We'll let this one run out here. But yeah, we already click fold and it just goes right in front of us, so we just let that one go. So here on the second hand, the ace 10 9 5 on the button. Obviously I don't have king king here. What happened here in this hand is I was doing some commentary and I was showing a previous hand. So by the time this kind of like cut in, we'll see how this goes. But how this action played out is I raised the button, raise here in the small blind, cold called, and rhythm here in the big blind, 3-bet, so win call after that. Flop here is, we'll just kind of realistically over my hand real quick. I think I make kind of a loose call on the flop here, but this game was playing relatively loose. I have a couple backdoor cards that don't bring a low in, plus I can make trips, plus I have like some sort of like backdoor draw here. So I think I make somewhat of a loose call here, but I call flop. Raise calls, obviously a gin turn. And we'll just kind of let this one play out for a second. Don't want to skip too far ahead. I just want to show like an occasional hand if I win it. Again, because I'm just a awesome narcissist. And we see that race here has king king 9-8. So again, three-handed game, king king 9-8 small blind. I think for the most part, if you guys have a structured hand like this, if you guys have like kind of a highish hand in the big blind, small blind, I actually don't think there's going to be a game where if someone opens, if you play a cold call range from the small blind, if you add a hand like this, I think it's actually fine. You have high only equity, but again, you're getting such a good price. Like this, most kings are always going to be defends in the big blind unless they're like ragged trash badoogies. Like obviously, if you have king 9 deuce rainbow in the big blind, that's almost never going to be a defend. But if you have like king 8 9 double suited, obviously that's going to be a defend. You just have to think about like the structure of a limit game, right? Like I have 0 bets in on the button. This player has 0.5 bets and this player has 0.1. Or 1 bet. So in this situation, if I come in raising in this situation, or someone comes in raising, if he puts in 1.5 bets, will he get out some of his money back in the pot? And with a double suited hand like this, I think the answer is like pretty clearly yes. You can definitely make a case like this type of hand is probably even close to a 3-bet pre-flop. I don't mind the fact that he cold called here, and I actually don't mind the fact if you like add these type of kings in your cold call range. I think this is actually a hand that he played. I think he played this hand actually pretty well. Turn is like the only interesting spot, I would say, because once he makes it to the river, I think he has to call kings. Especially with rhythm behind him on the turn. There's a flush draw, low draw, etc. out there. But the only person he realistically has to beat, I think, at this point is me. I'm not too worried about like rhythm going ahead and like check raise turn here too much. So I think race played his hand here okay. But yeah, we'll mark that down as another king hand. Let's go to the next one. All right, next hand here, king 5-6 on the button. Obviously, this is a little bit different than the other ones that we saw, like the king jack 5. I will say too, one of the things I want to mention, like if you usually have like some of these kings with low cards, a lot of these combinations are usually going to be 3-bets for most positions. Doesn't really matter, I would say 9-handed, 6-handed, 300 for the most part, especially short-handed. Like these kings go way up in value, especially if you have suits, double suited at low cards, anything like that. I mean, they're just such strong hands. In a 9-handed game, like you have to be a little bit tighter and you have to select a little bit more, but for the most part, they just go way up in value. I'm trying to think what like the bottom of my king opening range here is, but I probably open the majority of my kings here, even like king 8 deuce with maybe a suit. I think that's probably the borderline, but something along those lines, because like even like king 8-7, you have like a connected suit or a connected low. So even though the 8 deuce is a better low draw theoretically, the 8-7 is a little bit more connected. So my guess is like you might even have a little bit more value EV in that hand than you do with the 8 deuce. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but that might be my guess. So again, like this type of hand here, and we'll just like run it out, like obviously like super easy open. We do get 3-bet, and that doesn't really matter here. Again, like this is a hand where you can just go ahead and 4-bet sometimes. Knowing like what I know after the session here, I think this is just actually kind of a clear 4-bet, especially against my opponent. But I did hear it go ahead and call. Like, it's not going to be that big of a mistake one way or the other, the 4-bet versus the call in this situation. Again, this is Omaha High Low. They're split pots. Equities run close. You're not like giving a ton of EV one way or the other. Like obviously, like if we have like aces, we want to 4-bet more often just because we have so much EV. But in this type of game with so much going on and equities are close, like I don't think it's going to matter too much one way or the other if we decide to 4-bet or call. So yeah, that was number 3. Let's look at number 4. All right, the fourth hand here is a hand that Rhythm opens up. I'm sure at this point you guys can hold on one second. Just get it going. Yeah. So sorry. Let's go back here for a second. Roll it. All right, there we go. So in this hand right here, Rhythm's going to open the small blind, and we're going to call the big blind with the Jack 7 Deuce 5. So I'm sure you guys can guess what Rhythm has here. So Rhythm bets this flop, and we'll just kind of play this hand out. We'll pause it at showdown. So we call. Turn we have live deuce and 2 pair, so we have plenty of equity against a lot of stuff here. And call. Okay, so Rhythm here opens a small blind with king, king, 10, 9. For the most part here, I think this is going to be okay in a 3-handed game. Again, when you start getting into, I would say like the 6-handed, 9-handed games, it's probably a little bit closer. Again, just because of like the whole card removal thing. And again, I think his hand is like really close to an open just in general. But with that being said, I mean, honestly, in a 3-handed Omaha Eight game, you just don't do much folding in the small blind. It doesn't matter if you're playing a raise only strategy, if you're playing a limp raise strategy, you're just not doing a ton of folding. So my guess is like most kings are going to be opens. The Badoogie is probably really close, honestly, like king, king, 10, 9 rainbow, just because again, like you don't have a ton of suits. Just like kind of discussing his hand a little bit here in this situation, like he probably should be betting an ace 3-7 board. I would say at like a fair frequency. Obviously, his hand is really bad to do it with, but he does have the heart draw. So if he's gonna do it ever, it's probably on this flop. But in general, like if he doesn't have any sort of like flush draw on this board, I think his hand is probably just a check fold. But again, just like knowing when to play the king kings are just, they're super important because like obviously, the times when you play them and you're adding equity, you add like a significant amount. But when you play the wrong set of kings, like you're putting yourself in dire positions. And a lot of times I think a lot of players don't necessarily know what to do when they're playing, like all their kings, because a lot of times they're getting free rolled. They don't know where they stand in the hand. So kings in general are just like a really hard hand to play. I have 2 more hands here that I do want to go over with. So 1 second. All right, the next hand here is a hand that I actually don't play. Yes, I know. I'm not playing a hand. It's weird. But we are going to play this one out here. And I think this is another really good example of like where you can play kings. So here's Zoinks raises. And maybe I should have sped this one up just a little bit here. And Dosser's going to 3-bet. Mr. Shadow 4-bets. Zoinks calls. Now, the only thing I would say here is I believe these games are 5-bet games. So we'll keep that in mind just as we get to later in streets. So on the flop here, I'll just play this one out. But it's going to go bet. It's going to go raise. Dosser's going to 3-bet. It's going to go call. Call. Turns queen. Zoinks checks. Dosser bets. Shadow calls. Zoinks calls. It's going to go check. Check. Bet. Call. And call. As we can see here on the river here, Dosser's got king, king, 4-7 double suited. This is a really good example of a hand that should be 3-betting. Again, if you're going to play your kings for the most part, you want to get them. I actually haven't mentioned this, I think, in the video so far, but you want to try to attempt to get them heads up if you have the right one. we usually don't. I can't think of too many examples where we do a lot of cold calling with kings. I think for the majority of them, you want to. Again, I play a razor full strategy anyways for the most part, so I'm usually doing a lot of three betting or folding. But you want this type of hand where you have this double suitedness, this crappy low like as your side cards, and then your king's heads up. You want to get this heads up against the person who opens. For the most part here, I actually don't think anyone really misplayed their hand. It's kind of like a random board where you see like kings full, queens full, and then the third player has aces with queen. The only thing I would say is like with Dosser here having king 7-4 in position double suited, when it goes raise, 3-bet, 4-bet, call. I actually think he should cap his hand pre-flop. The reason being it's double suited, he's in position. These players don't necessarily have to have aces. And then when Zoinks calls, he most likely doesn't have aces. He could have like really bad high aces, I guess, theoretically. But Dosser's in position with really good kings double suited. So I actually think like capping pre-flop would be a little bit better. Plus, like sometimes you get to control the action when you cap, you get a lot of checks to you. So again, this is an example of a hand where like, if someone even opens from an early position, this hand is pretty much playable from any position, and we wanted to be doing some three betting. So I think that was I can't remember. I think it was the fifth hand. I think we got one more left. Let's do it. All right, last hand here. We have what looks to be a pretty raggedy king 10-4, even though it's double suited. But one thing that I've mentioned in the past in the videos is if there's a ton of action in front of you, the value of kings goes way up. Because again, if players are playing somewhat normal to the correct ranges, the card removal with the aces means your kings have a ton of high value. Now we can't just I don't think we can just 4-bet here like king 10-4 rainbow if it goes crazy, but king 10-4 double suited here is pretty strong. So again, even though Dosser's a little bit short, I don't think he's going to put his money in here with like just random anything. So it's going to go raise, call, 3-bet. And again, like now at this point, we're just going to go and cap our hand or 4-bet our hand. I'm even like, look, I got this hand. This is so awesome. Moxie caps, and then it's just going to go cap whatever. Dosser gets all in. And again, you can see this isn't like something that you can expect to happen every single time, but it happens at a more frequent pace when a lot of the card removal that you see from this type of action, goes. So again, a lot of high hands become playable, and not just kings too, a fair bit of queens, depending on your side cards, jack side cards, etc. I don't have really as many good examples here because I can just go back on the videos that I've seen and I can specifically remember like kings, but definitely good like double suited queens, double suited jacks, etc. Those type of hands go way up in value. Even like, you're like 10-10-9-9. Those hands are just so much more likely to hit. I sound like a bingo expert, but they're so much more likely to hit when the people who have proper ranges in front of you are like betting and raising. So obviously here we flop top set. We'll just play this one out as kind of the conclusion for the video. We do get led into easy raise here, trying to deny flush and low equity. And then we just have to hold on to the seat of our pants. We pretty much get one of the worst. I wouldn't say the worst river, but one of the worst rivers, because we lose to we don't get scooped by a wheel, but we do lose to 4-5 and diamonds, and we don't block anything. We do have a 4 in our hand, I guess, so that does help us a little bit. But we still call. So as a note, just as a note, like Moxie capping his hand here, I think is probably a slight mistake. But whatever, it doesn't really matter when Dosser's probably all in. And then 3-4-5-8 pre-flop is probably just a 3-bet if he's going to play this hand. I mean, he could probably do anything. It's probably close one way or the other, but I'd probably say like 3-bet or fold. Then obviously Dosser gets an ace, and so be it. But again, like when all these low cards have been removed, plus the aces have been removed, like these kings go way up in value. So, anyways, here that was Mixed Fix for you guys, part 3. If you have any comments or questions or anything that you'd like to see. So again, I think these videos for the most part are going to be the most beneficial if you are just learning the games, because they're the easy fixes for the most. They're going to be the easy fixes. Let's say easier fixes. The first two that we did, I would say, are just super easy fixes. But these now, generally, like when we talk about like what kings we want to play, we're getting a little bit more in depth. So again, any sort of questions, comments, leave them below. Like, subscribe, do the regular stuff. If you want to open a Phenom account and start playing kings in Omaha High-Low, please click the link below. It helps me and helps my channel out. And again, I have a standing offer. If anyone plays up to an hour on Phenom, records it, and sends it to me in a mixed game, I am more happy to review it. I will review it and post it to YouTube, and you can do that with me over a Skype, Google call, whatever the kids are using these days to do chat. So, yeah, until then, good luck at the tables. I will talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.